Welcome to the Gospel and Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Nerbos, and each episode I bring in guests to discuss issues related to the world's cultures from a Christian perspective. All right, here with Dr. Doug Dorman.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations on finishing up your doctorate.
Thank you.
And you've recently done a study trying to understand apostolic teams.
Yes.
What do they do? Who are they? Maybe tell us what is one of these apostolic teams.
Well, we studied 8 different teams with 32 participants in the teams, and these are folks who are going from typically the U.S. but several places around the world to form these teams. But they're only there for short periods of time, but they go back repeatedly, and so they'll typically go from 10 days to 3 weeks. But they make multiple trips over usually about a 3-year period.
How is that different than a short-term mission? Do they do something different, or are they different people, or?
Yeah, it's they're not building anything. They're going and training. Basically, they're taking what has been given to them theologically and through years of pastoring. The typical team's made up of guys who've pastored for 25 to 30 years. And so they're in their 50s and beyond, and they're saying we want to give the last half of our life professionally to training pastors in the majority world.
Okay, can you tell us about one of these teams? That
Wow.
you met? And
the crazy thing is when we studied the 8 teams, we were not looking for this, but they formed into the APEST of apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, and teachers. We weren't looking for that at all, but that was just interesting. Wasn't really the focus of the study, but found it pretty fascinating that some of the teams were very much about multiplying churches. Some were very prophetic in their orientation. Others were very evangelistic, and then there were pastoral shepherding type teams, and then teaching teams. So that was a bit of something that surprised us. But what we found on these is how they formed and functioned, we thought was all about relationships. And what we actually discovered was it was more a matter of a mixture of relationship and mission, that the two could not be separated, that the relational commitment couldn't be separated from the mission itself.
is that the relationship of the people on the team, or their relationship with the people they're ministering to, or?
Yeah, it was both. It was really, I'd say that there were 2 extreme teams. One was, it could be summarized by their leader's statement, and he said, we're all about multiplying viral, missional, discipleship-making, leadership, developing, church-planting movements. And every word within that was carefully measured, and it was focused on, we're about mission. And then another guy who worked with European parliamentarians, his statement was, destiny is a corporate matter. When we discover the people with whom our destiny lies, the rest will unfold. I know both of these guys extremely well, and they're both very relationally committed to their teams, but they're also very missionally oriented in the thrust of their focus. And so that just kept showing up over and over and over, that they were committed to each other, but they were also committed to what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. So is this something that any church could adopt? I mean, can
Absolutely.
you just be an apostolic team?
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of people join teams for 2 reasons. They're attracted and they're recruited. And so the attraction is, Ken, you may look and say, hey, I like Doug, let's do some ministry together. So you were attracted to the friendship. But you also may say, I've always wanted to go to Kenya, or I've always wanted to go to this country. So you're attracted to the mission. And so there was that attraction piece. And then the recruitment piece, I do teams, I lead teams and train teams. I'm looking for, what are your gifts spiritually? What's your skill set? What do you bring that's unique? Is there a track record of integrity? And that 4th piece is, what's your cross-cultural experience? Are you green at this, or are you coming in with having done some other types of things in terms of short-term experiences. So we look for that mix of gifts, skills, integrity, and experience.
Is there anything new about apostolic teams? Apostolic sounds like an old word. Sounds like it might be
been around a
something
while.
that's yeah.
Well, the word apostolic simply means those who are sent, and so in that sense, we've kind of grabbed onto that word of apostolic, of those who are sent from culture A to culture B. But yeah, I think churches that want to be part of this is looking and saying, how do we plant something that can multiply? And by training the indigenous people who already know the culture, they already know the language, they don't have so much that that someone coming from a foreign culture has to learn and adapt to. We're all for traditional missions. I mean, that's we think that's essential, but we do know that those who are indigenous to the culture multiply churches much faster than people coming from a culture trying to learn the language, learn the culture, and multiply it out. So I think it's something that is a wave of the future that has potential.
You found how apostolic teams form. They can be either attracted or recruited.
Yeah.
How they function. It's this APEST, apostles, prophets, evangelists, teachers.
Yeah, shepherds and teachers.
Shepherds and teachers. Did you find out how they dissolve? How do they finish, when they're done?
Yeah, the exit strategy was pretty unique. They wanted to do two things in exiting. One is they wanted to complete a training cycle, which usually took 2 to 3 years to complete. The second thing is passing the baton. How do we pass the baton to the next generation? And that took on a nuanced approach. One of the ways of passing the baton is leaving a bricks and mortar training center. And 2 of the teams, that was really their focus. We want to have a location to train. But for others, it was more of, we want our cycle to be reproducible in a mobile format. And so it was very much like, in one sense, an online approach toward learning. But in both cases, the passing of the baton was either leaving a bricks and mortar building in place, or leaving a system in place that showed evidence of reproduction.
Yeah, so they're looking for, in either case, a church planting movement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do these teams do when it comes to training national teams? What do they bring that the national leadership doesn't have?
Yeah, there was quite a spread in that regard. Some of the teams really looked for 2 people. One, what they would call a catalytic, connector. So if you knew someone in another culture and you say, hey, I know someone in Uganda, and so you would be my connector. So I would connect with your friend in Uganda who was already leading a movement. So we're looking for the connector and the catalytic leader. So then what we would do is go in with the catalytic leader and say, where can we help? What's missing?
You ask them, they tell you what
We ask them. And then they identify that. So there was that aspect of it. And then in other cases, folks came in with a set curriculum. They knew what they wanted to reproduce, and they went in and taught that material.
They've got something they want. They've got a discipleship training program they're going to bring cross-culturally.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there was one was based on you tell us, and the other was we tell you.
Yeah.
But even with the we tell you, it sounds paternalistic in a sense, and it really, as I dug deeper, I didn't see that. Actually, there was flexibility within that. But they did bring a vision of, we want to see this multiplied. And in the African nations, there was a strong commitment through colonialism to, it's not a church if it's not a building. And so one of the things that I saw with these teams that were working, and most of the 8 were working in Africa, as well as Asia and other parts of the world, but they just said, hey, we want to equip you to use your homes as a place of ministry, and A team I just came back from visiting, that was they really bought into that and were able to multiply out where now they're training 347 people every week. But it took the shift from we've got to have a building that the West pays for to we can use our homes.
Okay.
And that was a big shift.
Yeah, I mean, the more reliant they are on the buildings, the more this does become a short-term mission project.
That's
where you're out
exactly
there
right.
building a building.
Yeah.
So, where do people go to find out more about apostolic teams?
Yeah, there are a couple of places. Global Training Network is a ministry that does that quite a bit. It would be just online, www.globaltrainingnetwork.org, and yournextstep.ws would be a second way to find out more.
All right, thanks for introducing us to your research and these people working globally on training indigenous leaders in church multiplication.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Gospel and Culture podcast. And to learn more, go to gospelandculturepodcast.com.